The lobby of the Sterling Heights Hotel in Santa Monica was alive with activity. It was a Friday night, and every corner buzzed with the energy of weary travelers checking in, bellhops maneuvering luggage carts, and the soft hum of conversations bouncing off the polished marble floors. This was no ordinary hotel. Its grandeur was unmistakable. Towering palm trees framed the entrance, and a chandelier that cost more than most homes glimmered in the center of the ceiling. Behind the front desk stood Rachel, mid-30s, confident but visibly worn down from the day's relentless pace. She had spent the last 12 hours juggling demanding guests, last-minute room requests, and the occasional irate caller who swore their reservation was somehow lost. Tonight, Rachel was in no mood for more surprises. Her uniform, crisp in the morning, now bore the faint wrinkles of a long shift, and her patience was threadbare. It was in this controlled chaos that the lobby doors opened once more. A man walked in, unremarkable at first glance, dressed in faded jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie that looked like it had seen better days. He carried no luggage, just a leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder. The man paused, scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. His appearance barely turned a head. Guests continued their conversations, and staff moved about with purpose. He was just another late-night walk-in, but there was something about the way he carried himself. His casual stance didn't match the nervous energy of most last-minute guests. He exuded a calm assurance, as if the bustling world around him was merely background noise. The receptionist noticed him, too, but not for his quiet confidence. Instead, it was his disheveled appearance that caught her eye and sparked her judgment. Rachel gave a quick glance toward the man as he approached the desk, suppressing a sigh. She could already feel her irritation bubbling to the surface. In her experience, late-night walk-ins were usually a hassle, either someone trying to haggle for a better rate or an exhausted traveler who wouldn't take no for an answer. Judging by this man's appearance, she thought she knew exactly which category he'd fall into. "Good evening," the man said, his voice calm and unassuming. "I'd like to book a room for the night, please." Rachel forced a smile, the kind that barely reached her eyes. "Unfortunately, we're fully booked tonight, sir," she replied, her tone brisk but polite enough to remain professional. She tapped at her keyboard, pretending to confirm what she already knew. The man didn't react immediately. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying her with a mild curiosity that made her shift uncomfortably. "Fully booked?" he asked, his voice even. "Not a single room available?" Rachel stiffened, sensing a potential argument brewing. "That's correct. We've had a very busy day and all our rooms are occupied," she said, motioning toward the lobby full of guests, as if to reinforce her point. "There's a motel a few blocks down. They might have availability." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment she thought she saw a flicker of amusement cross his face, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He leaned slightly on the counter, meeting her gaze. "No cancellations? No options at all?" he asked, his tone carrying no trace of frustration, only curiosity. Rachel felt her irritation flare. Why couldn't he just take her answer and leave? "Sir, I don't think this is the right place for you," she said, her voice slipping into a more condescending tone. "Like I said, there's a motel nearby. They'll probably have something that fits your situation." Her eyes flicked over his hoodie and jeans, the implication clear. This wasn't the place for someone like him. The man straightened, his expression unreadable now. For a moment Rachel thought he might argue, but he simply nodded and stepped back from the counter. "Thank you for your time," he said evenly, turning to leave. He walked toward the lobby's seating area instead of heading for the exit, settling into a corner chair with a clear view of the front desk. Rachel couldn't help but glance his way every so often as she continued her work. What was he doing? Why hadn't he left? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye, but she quickly dismissed it. Her job was demanding enough without worrying about random guests who didn't belong here. Still, something about the way he sat there quietly observing made her uneasy, but she brushed it off. After all, what could he possibly do? As the minutes dragged on, Rachel tried to shake off the strange sensation of being watched. The man hadn't moved from his corner seat, his eyes occasionally scanning the lobby but often landing back on her. She told herself it didn't matter. He was just some random guy who didn't take no for an answer. Nothing more. Still, her frustration grew with every sideways glance. By the time the clock struck 11, the lobby had begun to quiet down. The crowd of guests dwindled, leaving Rachel with a manageable workload. She let out a sigh of relief, glad that her shift was nearing its end. The thought of finally sitting down with a glass of wine at home was the only thing keeping her going, but her relief was short-lived. "Excuse me," the man said, standing at the desk again. His sudden approach startled Rachel, though she quickly masked it with her usual practiced professionalism, or at least what was left of it after a long day. "Yes," she said, her tone sharper than she intended. She didn't bother forcing a smile this time. "I'm sorry to bother you again," he said, his voice calm and composed, "but I couldn't help noticing that a few guests seem to have just checked in. Are you sure there's no room available?" Rachel felt her patience snap. "Sir, I've already explained this to you," she said, crossing her arms. "Those guests had reservations, which is why they got rooms. I don't know what else to tell you." He nodded, unfazed by her irritation. "I see," he replied thoughtfully. "And if I wanted to make a reservation for tomorrow night, would that be possible?" Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "Tomorrow?" she repeated. "Yes. Is there availability tomorrow?" he asked, his voice still maddeningly calm. She frowned, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she checked the system. "We have rooms available tomorrow," she asked, cautiously, "but you'd like to have exactly the list we were working with," she admitted reluctantly. "But I'm not sure what difference that makes for you tonight." "It makes no difference," he said with a small smile, "but it's good to know." Rachel's irritation spiked. His tone felt almost smug, though she couldn't quite pinpoint why. "Look, I don't have time for this," she snapped, her voice louder than she intended. "If you don't have a reservation and you can't afford to stay here, then maybe you should stop wasting both our time and go to that motel I told you about." The words hung heavy in the air. The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. He gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, before stepping back again. "Understood," he said simply. Without another word, he returned to his seat in the corner of the lobby, his composure intact. Rachel felt a flicker of guilt, but she quickly squashed it. He wasn't her problem. She had done her job, and that was that. Or so she thought. But the way he watched her, quiet and composed, left a strange feeling she couldn't quite ignore. As the minutes turned to hours, Rachel went about her work, but she couldn't fully ignore the man in the corner. As the minutes turned to hours, Rachel went about her work, but she couldn't fully ignore the man in the corner. The next morning, the staff at the Sterling Heights Hotel gathered for an unscheduled team meeting. Rachel, still groggy from her late shift, walked in and slumped into a chair at the back of the room, scrolling through her phone. These meetings were typically about updates or reminders, but today there was an unusual buzz in the air. Whispers about a special announcement floated through the room, and even the senior staff looked unusually alert. Something was definitely different. The door opened, and the general manager, Mr. Calloway, entered with a man following closely behind him. Rachel's stomach sank. It was the same man from the night before, the one she had so casually dismissed. But now he was standing tall and composed in a tailored suit, completely different from the hoodie and jeans he had worn the previous evening. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Calloway began cheerfully, his voice booming with confidence. "I hope you're all doing well. We have a very special guest with us today, someone who has taken a great interest in the operation of this hotel." Rachel's mind raced. Could this be some sort of complaint? Had this man come back to make a scene about how she treated him the night before? Her heart pounded as she sank lower in her chair, trying to make herself invisible. "Allow me to introduce Mr. Elon Musk," Mr. Calloway announced, his voice brimming with pride. "The new owner of Sterling Heights Hotel." The room fell completely silent. Every set of eyes turned toward the man Rachel had dismissed so harshly just hours earlier. He gave a small nod, his face calm but carrying the same knowing look from the previous night. Rachel froze, her breath caught in her throat. Elon Musk? She had humiliated Elon Musk, the hotel's owner. Her mind reeled, replaying snippets of the previous night's encounter like a nightmare. The man she had assumed was just another unkempt walk-in was now standing in front of the entire staff as their boss. Elon stepped forward, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. "I've always believed that the true heart of any business is its people," he began, his voice measured and thoughtful. "That's why I like to see things for myself without any filters or special treatment. Last night I had the chance to observe how this hotel operates, from the incredible teamwork of the bellhops to the patience of the concierge staff. I saw a lot to admire." He paused, allowing his words to settle over the room before his gaze shifted to Rachel. She felt a flush creep up her neck, her stomach sinking as he addressed her directly. "But I also saw moments that reminded me why attention to detail and kindness matter so much in the hospitality industry," Elon continued. His words were heavy, and even though he didn't single her out, his gaze landed on her with steady, deliberate intent. The weight of his statement was unmistakable, and Rachel's stomach churned with guilt. He repeated, his words taking churned with guilt. Elon didn't call her out by name, but the way his gaze had landed on her made it clear that his words were meant for her. In a place like this, where people come expecting the best, how we treat them defines their experience. Sometimes even the smallest gestures, a smile, a bit of patience, can make all the difference. The air in the room felt thick, as if everyone was holding their breath. The tension was palpable, and Rachel, who had been dismissive and condescending to him the night before, felt the full weight of her actions. He continued, his tone firm yet not unkind. "This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about growth. Every person in this room plays a role in the success of this hotel, and I'm here because I believe in its potential and in all of you." The room broke into polite applause, but Rachel remained silent. Her thoughts raced, and she couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. She couldn't stop replaying the way she had spoken to him, how dismissive, how impatient she had been. All of it seemed so glaring now, so avoidable. Her face burned with shame. "Starting today," Elon added, "I'll be working closely with management to ensure that our team has everything it needs to succeed. That includes training, support, and yes, accountability. We owe it to ourselves and our guests to set the highest standards." As the meeting adjourned, the staff began to file out, buzzing with whispered conversations. Rachel lingered in her seat, her legs feeling like lead. Just as she worked up the courage to stand, she felt a presence beside her. Looking up, she saw Elon standing there. Her heart nearly stopped. "Rachel, isn't it?" he asked, his voice calm but direct. She swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, sir," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon regarded her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, a genuine, almost reassuring smile. "I know yesterday was a long day for you. It's not easy to be at the front lines when things get busy. But remember, every interaction counts. People notice how they're treated, even when you think no one's watching." Elon called. Rachel nodded quickly, unable to find the right words. I understand," she stammered. "And I'm so sorry about—" Elon held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "No need to apologize. Just learn from it. That's all I ask." With that, he gave her a small nod and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The meeting, the revelation, his words, all of it swirled in her mind like a storm. For the first time in her career, she truly understood the weight of her actions and the ripple effect they could have. In that moment, Rachel made a silent promise to herself to do better, not just for the guests, but for her own growth. As Rachel walked out of the conference room, she felt a mixture of emotions, embarrassment, guilt, but also a spark of determination. Elon's words echoed in her mind, not as a reprimand, but as a lesson. She realized that her behavior, though born out of exhaustion, wasn't justifiable. Every guest walking through the doors deserved kindness, regardless of appearances. Over the next few weeks, Rachel made a conscious effort to approach her job differently. She greeted every guest with a genuine smile, even when she was tired. She took the time to listen instead of rushing to conclusions. Slowly, she began to notice the impact. Guests responded warmly. Colleagues started to rely on her more. The job that once felt like a grind now carried a renewed sense of purpose. The story of the mysterious owner became a quiet legend among the staff. No one knew when Elon might return, but the possibility kept everyone on their toes. For Rachel, though, the encounter wasn't about the fear of being watched. It was a reminder of the kind of person she wanted to be. She no longer saw her job as just a paycheck, but as an opportunity to make small, meaningful differences in people's lives. The lesson she learned that day was simple yet profound. Never underestimate the value of kindness, and never judge someone by their appearance. You never know who you're talking to, or the impact your words might have. And so, as Rachel went on to become a pillar of excellence at Sterling Heights, the moral of the story became clear. It costs nothing to be kind, but the rewards can be life-changing.